923rd meeting of the directors of MSAD 27. How do you want to do this?
I should have had roll call, and I will have roll call just for the record. So Kelly.
Here.
Shannon Lugden.
Here.
Katie Levaster.
Here.
David Saucier. Here. Tanya Wazin.
Here.
Toby Jandro.
Here.
Sarah Ashley.
Here.
Sadie Pelletier.
Here.
And Connor Pelletier. So we got a lot of moving parts here. And I guess when I made this agenda, it was not knowing that we would not have a board chair, not remembering we would not have a vice chair, so I asked the treasurer to start the meeting today, which is why Sarah's here. But I guess the most appropriate way to start, I guess, would be to just welcome our new board members and say welcome to the SAD 27 board of directors. We do have a different board than ever before, with the most female representation that we've ever had. So when I became a superintendent 7-8 years ago, it was all men. So that's great. But in order not to put our new board members on the spot, I guess maybe it would be appropriate to just go around the table and everyone introduce themselves so everyone knows who everyone is. So Tanya, if you don't mind, would you?
Sure. I'm Tanya Wazin. This will be my first full year on the board.
Dave Saucier. I've been here as long as 10.
Kelly, first day. Sarah Ashley, and I think this is somewhere around year 5-ish, something like that.
And I'm Ben Sorrell, Superintendent of Schools, and I believe I'm in my
Since 2016.
8th year.
2016.
7th, I'm not good at math, 7th year? Yeah, I've been here for a little while. 8th year, I think this is finishing my 8th year.
So, Katie Levaster, I'm representing District 3. I wanted to take the opportunity to serve as a conduit to parents, administrative staff, and teachers, to be a voice for our community, focus on the current and future generations of our children. I have 2 that'll be starting school here in the very near future, and so I figured this was my opportunity to share my input.
I'm Toby Jandro. This is my first meeting back. I served 2 terms and then was off for a year. So this will be I think I'm going in my 7th year, not consecutive.
Shannon Lugden, I represent Wallagrass District 2, and I started with Dave and Tanya.
I'm Sadie Pelletier. I'm a student rep. This is my 2nd year and my last. I'm a senior, so.
And we also do have Connor Pelletier, who's also a senior. He was unable to attend tonight. So welcome new board members. As I met with you, with the 2 new board members today, my advice was to listen, ask a lot of questions, and just don't be afraid to reach out if you need anything. I do believe that I provided you guys with the wrong superintendent notes, but Giselle went to go get the correct ones, so those should be in front of you momentarily. I gave you last meeting's notes, and that's not going to be helpful. But I have them on my screen, so I'm able to guide our conversations. We do have a board member resignation, and in your packets you should have a letter from Keith. I'm not going to read through the letter, but he did send it after he met with me last week. And Keith, we all know, is very thoughtful in all that he does. It's just he felt that it was his time. Did not want to leave the board, in the middle of budgets, but felt that with the new members on board, the current state of the district, he felt that we were in good hands. So we are thankful to Keith for all that he has done for us, and we wish him well as a regular citizen. Keith did share with me his boys never knew him as not a board member, so that's gonna be unique for their family, that, dad's not a board member. So it's a long time that he served on the board. Because we do not have a board chair and we do not have a vice chair, we need to appoint both, so that we can move on. This appointment of a chair and vice chair would just be until the end of the school year, and then, as we do every year, at the beginning of the new school year, we would revisit and nominate again. So I'll turn that over to you all for discussions or nominations, so that we can move forward.
I nominate Toby as chairman.
Great, is there a second?
Second.
Do we want to have any discussion? I will just want to say that Toby was the chairman for Valley Unified through some of the very tumultuous times, and I think he does a pretty good job of making sure everybody has a voice and their voice is heard in a fair and even way. And so I think that's a strength that Toby will bring here. So do we want to take a vote? All in favor of Toby as chair? Any opposed? 2 opposed? The motion carries. Toby, would you like to come sit here?
I'm good here.
Well, wait a minute.
We'll just slide the gavel towards him.
You can just bring your fist. So, would you like to carry on?
I guess we'll entertain a motion for the second chair,
Vice chair.
vice chair. I'd move for Sarah to be vice chair.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? All those opposed? Abstentions?
I'll abstain.
That's fair.
Just for fun.
So we have 4 in favor, 5 in favor. 1, did you vote?
I guess it.
Oh, in favor? We're probably.
See, maybe sit here.
Then, but I want to go see better.
Oh.
No, so we have all in favor, Sarah abstained. Sarah is the vice chair. Now, do we need to elect a treasurer? Okay.
And I will caveat this with whoever the treasurer becomes should also serve on the finance committee, just as that's how it's always gone together. And you're already on the finance committee, so it would have to be somebody with Sarah.
Is there anybody, then Sarah's the only person on the finance committee?
She was with Keith, but we'll get to that later on in the agenda.
Will I get in trouble if we get to that now?
No, we're gonna make committee appointments later, but just know that the treasurer should serve on the finance committee.
Is there anybody here who's interested in being on the finance committee?
I was,
You are?
yeah.
Okay, would you be interested in being the treasurer?
I'll move for nomination.
I'll second that. Any? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Toby, you second that?
I seconded that.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we have, any adjustments to the agenda then?
Yeah, one adjustment, and I did put it in blue font, under items of business, new business. We're gonna add a retirement of a Fort Kent Elementary Special Education Ed tech.
Toby, it's on the new agenda.
Am I looking at the old agenda?
The white copy agenda should be, not the notes, the agenda.
The agenda.
Yeah. wherever it is.
You know, I have one.
Yeah, everyone had one on the packet.
Okay, okay. This one.
Yep.
Okay, we need to take a vote on adjusting the agenda.
Yep.
I'll make a
Do it.
motion.
Okay, do we have a second? Any discussion? All those in favor? Pass it. So period of public participation on items of the agenda. Do we have a sign-up sheet today? Nobody signed up. Is there anybody in the public who came in hoping to discuss something on the agenda? Seeing none, we move on. Approval of minutes. This is for meeting number 92, March 6, 2023. For those of you who were here, can I get a motion on those approval of minutes?
I'll motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? And there should be an abstention. I wasn't here. So, financial statements. We have has everyone reviewed the financial statements? Is there any questions in the discussion?
I had a question, but I can't remember what it was. I didn't write it down. Lucy, there's just one, maybe this will be enough information. There was one place that we had a lot of receipts, but no expenditures, or it was very different from what was anticipated. Does any of that ring a bell? I don't remember where it was.
It does not ring a bell, just often.
Yeah.
Gina prepared this, but I can
I'll re-review, and if I get it, I'll ask just later. It wasn't I guess, there's nothing here that causes you alarm in
No.
this. That would totally suffice.
A lot of times things are paid out at a certain time of the year.
Right.
Or reimbursed at a certain time of the year that makes that number fluctuate
Right.
quickly.
Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the financial report for February.
Okay, any seconds? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Peter, I understand is, oh wait. Yes, Peter Caron is going to be giving us a presentation.
Yes, very brief presentation. Thank you.
Before you start, Peter, I just want to let the board know that Peter's been working very, very hard on this pre-K grant extension, and that also extends to Mr. Nadeau and his team. Mr. Nadeau and with our two pre-K teachers, they've been working extremely hard on this, and we're appreciative of all the hard work.
Thank you. So, the purpose of this meeting is just to refresh the memory of our continuing board members regarding some key components of our pre-K expansion, and to introduce our new board members to what the key components of that expansion are. So, we, back in September, spoke to you as a board, indicated that we are interested in pursuing a pre-K expansion grant through the Maine Department of Education. And what we were anticipating at that time was we would serve a projected enrollment of 46 students, and that we would offer a choice between full-day, full-week programming for up to 16 students in one classroom, and that we would keep the option of half-day, full-week programming in another classroom in 2 cohorts of 15 students, one that would attend in the mornings, one that would attend in the afternoons. So I'm pleased to tell you that we've exceeded our projected enrollment to date with the recently concluded pre-K registration and screening process at Fort Kent Elementary School. We had 52 pre-registrants. So we're now looking at not only those 2 classrooms, but also a 3rd classroom at the ACAP Head Start site, in hopes that we can accommodate as much of the interest in full-day pre-K programming as exists, and it is considerable. It's far above the 16 that we've looked at. However, we have also, as a local team, established that developmentally, in terms of age and readiness for full-day programming, it's probably best if a child has not reached the age of May 31 of this year, that they be recommended to, age of 4 by May 31 of this year, that they be recommended for a half-day program. And that's based on the experience and the observations of our pre-K teaching staff as well as our building principal. So not everyone that is expressing an interest in full-day pre-K will necessarily, qualify for that. But we're going to do our best to accommodate as much of the interest as we can between our 3 classrooms, 2 at Fort Kent Elementary School and a 3rd at the ACAP Early Care and Education Center on Alfalfa Road here in Fort Kent. So, and ACAP is a partner in our grant application. It was a requirement that we partner with a community-based agency with experience in early care and education services. So the Head Start program was a partner in our application here in SAD 27, as well as our applications in SAD 33 in the Madawaska School Department. Our plan was to continue to, and we will continue to employ 2 full-time pre-K teachers at Fort Kent Elementary School. And we also wanted to elevate 2 80% time Ed Tech 3s to 100% time. And in addition to that, we wanted through the grant to hire a 3rd education technician that could do targeted work with identified children with specific needs. And so all of that is in the grant application. And we're hoping that we can introduce into the full-day program a play-based curriculum that will promote both interpersonal skills and intrapersonal skills, self-regulation, self-management, as well as the ability to get along well with other children and develop productive relationships with other children. So we see those as foundational skills that lead to success throughout a child's educational experience, and especially in the early childhood years of pre-K through grade 3. So that's very much part of the plan. We're very fortunate that as our partner, ACAP is going to provide both family coaching and classroom coaching as part of our project, and that's at their expense. Now, when I spoke to you, I think after our grant submission in October, and it might have been in early November, I told you that our grant application, the amount that we qualified for, based on a webinar that I had attended, and following those directions, that we qualified for a grant in the amount of $74,022. And I also told you at that time, there's no way we're going to get all of that because what we want to add doesn't cost that much. So I'm here to tell you that I was both right and wrong. Not only are we going to get that full $74,022, but we will qualify for $216,021 because unbeknownst to us, NDOE typically will fund the cost of a grant. In this instance, they said, we want to fund the cost of your entire pre-K program. So they did that both through grant money, and they also gave us an allocation for our pre-K students, our 16 projected full-time pre-K students for next year. They gave us an allocation that reduces for pre-K by 75% the local share amount we need to raise for pre-K. I've never seen a grant like this. Usually, you're scrapping and scratching for every penny, and they're saying, move this into the grant, move this into the grant. So virtually, all of our expenses from the local budget line, we've been able to move in to the grant funding request for the upcoming school year. And here's one of the two tables that we're working from, and you can see that the total pre-K expansion grant request based on this table is $232,029.80. What's interesting though is that we still can only actually receive a total grant amount that constitutes the total of what are allowable expenses under this pre-K expansion grant. So when we look at table 3, we can't count any of the salary and benefits for our teachers, but we can count all of the salary and benefits for our current ed techs as well as the third ed tech. And we can move all instructional materials and supplies into our grant request. We can move all classroom equipment and non-instructional materials and supplies into the grant request, all playground equipment and outdoor learning space supplies into the grant request. We're going to retrofit the wall that joins our two classrooms so that we can have an interior adjoining door, so that movement back and forth between the classrooms for the students and the teachers will be much easier and much more efficient, because we do anticipate there may be some movement based on children's needs and our teachers' particular strengths and our ed tech's particular strengths. We're moving all of our pre-K transportation expenses, which is a percentage of our total student transportation amount, into the grant line for this year for that professional development and some safety and medical supplies. They'll all be grant funded. That brings us to an allowable expense total of $218,021 for our pre-K expansion grant for the upcoming school year. So that's where we are. We are now in the contracting phase. We've been negotiating this grant amount. We're ready to move to the contracting phase. That means two things. We, number one, need to sign a contract with DOE that allows us to access the $218,000 and begin spending it. And it also means that we have to develop a formal MOU with Aroostook County Action Program that will cover all of the different partnership elements of our pre-K expansion. And both of those we need your approval for. So with all of that said, I will pause and entertain any questions that you might have. Yes?
Is this a program that we're going to continue even after the grant, do you suspect?
We're going to evaluate the grant. One of the things that we've said as part of securing a grant is that we're going to evaluate the ongoing need, and we're going to do that using 3 different resources. One of those is best practice research, and we already know that the research is indicating that full-day pre-Ks can be very beneficial because it allows you more time, especially to work on the social emotional development of children that prepares them for success throughout their school careers. So we know that piece is in place, but we also need to take a look at the data that is generated, and we need to get some stakeholder feedback. So we'll be talking with teachers, and we'll also be talking with parents and surveying them and getting information that will indicate whether or not the need does continue. I choose to be optimistic that the outcomes will be good and that we will continue it, If we do, we are going to have to fund that locally. Our grant allocation is for 1 year and 1 year only. What that would mean for us is if we determined that we needed to keep the third Ed Tech 3, that we would have to fund that locally. Because everything else is, those are already budgeted expenses.
Okay, yeah, so that would be the increased cost of the system if
Correct,
we
The one in
continue.
tech. And the 20% above what our.
And the
current-
20% above, excuse me, for the 2 current Ed Techs. And one of the things that we've indicated that we would do is take a look at different title monies, and just look at how we're using Ed Techs. So it's gonna be a pretty broad-based approach, to determining how best to continue the program beyond this first year.
One thing we've recognized for a long time is that, you know, if students are coming in with such varying gaps, and then they're leaving pre-K with those gaps in place, those gaps remain, kindergarten, first grade. So this is an effort to really address those gaps by trying to target students that need a full-day pre-K program, to, you know, make that gap a little bit smaller, so that when they're leaving pre-K, you know, that huge gap doesn't exist. That's the goal here, to try to address it early, and so that the remainder of their educational years, they don't have that, they're not behind so much throughout the years.
Thank you.
Yes, Dave?
Total pool of available students who could enroll in one, either a half-day or a full-day pre-K, it would be what?
The total pool as of today is,
That would be able to apply, not necessarily, I understand you have 52.
oh, okay, so
How many have not applied?
on,
Are there any out there that?
oh, we anticipate that there'll probably be a few more. Typically, it's anywhere between 8 and 10 students after the pre-K registration and screening period that do appear for pre-K registration. We don't know if that will happen this year because a proactive step was taken. Our pre-K teachers knew of families that had pre-K age children and they weren't on the list of signups, so they reached out to them. Those people might typically be part of the 8 to 10 additional students. So we don't know if we'll hit that number, but let's say 5 were contacted and chose to come in, we might be looking at another 5. So we could be looking at 57, we could be looking at 60.
Are there any, in addition to that, who simply haven't applied and might not have responded favorably to a request to apply or anything like that?
I'm not aware of anyone who did not respond favorably to a request to come in and register and screen. Are you aware, Mr. Nadeau, of anyone who was contacted and said, no, I'm not gonna bother with that, or?
There's one student,
One
one
parent.
parent, but there's some extenuating circumstances there, so.
So you're basically capturing the entire pool of eligible students.
Trying to, yes.
We hope to.
Trying to reach them all.
Registration process.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. And we did a lot of advanced marketing using social media and and we're gonna continue to look. And one of our tasks will be to determine, all right, once we have the 48 seats that we can accommodate at Fort Kent Elementary School, what's our plan? And are we gonna fill all of those right away, keep some in reserve? But we do know we have a third classroom. So we're gonna start meeting on May 12th to begin looking at half-day versus full-day placements and placements at the ACAP site in the partnership classroom where they can receive wraparound services. So we'll continue to address those issues as they come up. Kelly?
So is it based, my understanding is by their age, so by May 31st, if they're not 4, it's gonna be more considered half-days
We
compared to
think it's
full days?
developmentally, it's more appropriate for those children to be in a half-day program. Now, some of them may also demonstrate some indicators that would suggest that they could do a full-day program in our cooperative classroom where they and their families could receive wraparound services through Head Start and family coaches. So there's going to be a lot of material for us to sift through when we're making those decisions. Shannon?
So the teachers that we have here at Fort Kent Elementary are like licensed registered, whatever, the,
Certified.
certified, thank you.
081 certified, yes.
And then at the ACAP classroom, are they, is it the
They
same?
are also 081 certified.
Okay.
Yeah, and so one of the things that we need to do is make sure that our curriculum are pretty well aligned. So we're gonna share the standards that we use from the Maine Early Learning Developmental Standards with ACAP. We know that they also address those standards, but we wanna make sure that they know all the standards that we address. We're looking at getting them registered into Power School and also into Empower, so they can be assessing students' progress relative to our standards as well as monitoring daily attendance.
And we already started that process this year with the partnership, so those students that live in SAD 27 are already our students. So we got the ball rolling this year. How many students do we have at 8?
There are a total of 9, and 7 of them are from SAD 27.
Is there, I had a parent reach out to me and ask when we would know what particular students' days are gonna look like next year,
Yes,
because daycare is tight in town.
it's very
and
tight.
Do you have any idea when you'll know?
We're hoping that we can have most of those placements taken care of in, on May 12th. And then part of our MOU with ACAP indicates that we'll do a cooperative process in determining best placements. So we're hoping that by the end of May at the latest, we can get word out to everyone regarding what their placements are. Definitely prior to the end of this school year. It will not wait till this summer.
Okay, good.
Whereas other schools in Aroostook County still do not have full-day kindergarten. We're talking about full-day pre-K. It's amazing.
So, and Robby just qualified, late May, early June at the latest. So it'll be before the end of the school year.
Yeah, I just, things are not nagging, things are tough.
No, they are, and we're aware of that, and that's really one of the reasons that the governor's office has been promoting this pre-K expansion using American Recovery Act monies, because they realize that the lack of good quality early care and education services for children is impeding not only the progress of children, but also the ability of their parents to get out into the workforce and progress in the workforce.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Any other questions for Peter? Anything else, Peter?
I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. Entertain a motion.
All of these to approve pre-K grant expansion, acceptance of community grant. The memorandum of understanding with the kayak.
Second.
We'll give it to Tanya. Tanya, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous? Now we're at the superintendent part.
I did want to give you an update on what happened on Friday, March 24. As I so often get lovely phone calls in the morning from Peter Saucier, I got one on that morning as well. Peter was alarmed, as he put it. It sounded like somebody was knocking on the wall at the bus garage. And through various communications, it was clear that something was going on. Police were starting to respond, and there were other reports throughout the community that it was definitely the sound of gunfire. So I rushed over here as quickly as I could, and when I arrived, we were able to connect with one of the officers who was on the scene. The police still did not know what they were facing. Of course, at that time on social media, everything is starting to, give all kinds of different stories. So it was a joint recommendation, I guess, between the police department and SAD 27 to cancel the day. At that time, we didn't know how long this was going to draw out. It was a early release for students, so we couldn't delay the start for students. So it was simply a day that we had to cancel for the students. I think it was the right call based on, everything that's going on, that we unfortunately see in the news. But later that afternoon, as I was able to debrief with Keith, I asked Keith if he would allow me to write a letter on behalf of the board to the Commissioner of Education, asking to have that day waived, as it was something beyond our control. So we did that day, and I did give you a response letter dated March 28th, that the day was forgiven by the DOE. I'm pleased to announce that we have that waiver of the day, and I'm here to answer any questions you have about the determination to cancel school on that day.
It was the right call, honestly.
I've never been so scared. I was running through these halls like ducking in front of windows because I didn't, and go upstairs, Scott Sippity is here, it's 5 a.m. and go home, and so I was really charged. I made some mistakes. I told the full staff they had the day off. In retrospect, when you tell people they have the day off, you can't take that back. I know that, I misspoke. I should have said, please be on call for further information. But when we were just going through and canceling, Peter was already redirecting buses. I wanted to get that message out to parents whose children were about to get dropped off after just being picked up. So it was timely responding. And so I do own up to the fact that probably shouldn't have asked everyone to stay home for the day and give them the day off. But in hindsight, if that's the worst, everyone was safe, so I think we're okay.
Absolutely.
Any other questions on that? It's a good segue to the next agenda item. Last week we got the 2023 State of Maine Threat Assessment. I just printed out the copy of that assessment based on school threats. And if you had a chance to read through that, it's daunting. It shows the trends, and it basically says they don't expect this to go the other direction anytime soon. Not only with threats, but with active shooter situations. Not in the state of Maine, obviously we haven't had any, but across the country. So if you do have a chance to read through that, it is good information. It means for us as a team, and we've already had discussions about this, it's probably spending a lot less time practicing fire drills and spending a lot more time practicing different kinds of drills for different kinds of things that could occur. The school that in Memphis, the last school shooting? Nashville, excuse me. They practiced a lot. That's the report we're getting. They practiced often and a lot and partnered with their local police force, and that's how they were able to not have more deaths or injuries. So I think for us it's going to be a lot of the same, just making sure that we have some muscle memory behind what we're supposed to do in the event of a school threat. And we will take every threat seriously, and if that means we have to close school for threats, we definitely will, and then move forward that way. I'm part of a listserv where we get information like this and more through the Maine Information and Analysis Center. I keep an eye on that, and we do now have a group chat of the Aroostook County Superintendents, where if one of our schools is hearing something, we're getting that message out so that we're all on alert, so that we can best be ready for when anything happens. I hate having these discussions, but I think we need to because it's real.
Have the students had a drill this year? Like an active shooter?
I'll ask the principals, building administrators, have we had any kind of drills around active shooting this year?
We've had teacher training, but we have not had an active drill in the school.
The last time we did one, we actually had, people opening windows and crawling out of windows, and the winters don't play well to that here, unless you're on the second story and there's 50 feet of snow. But definitely this spring, we did talk as an admin team, we'd like to start having more active training, have a refresher training for our staff at the end of the school year with all of the ALICE protocols. And then I'd like to sit with Chief Delana and his team and look to have a tabletop exercise with our staff, with our administrative staff, sometime this summer, when before we start the school year. Any questions about that? The third thing I have is it's called a CSTAG Threat Assessment Training Opportunity from the Maine DOE Safety School Center. Every now and then we will have a kiddo in crisis or something happening with one of our students that leads to us looking for some kind of a threat assessment to see if that student is of a danger to themselves or others. Past practice with that has been taking some documentation around that, passing that over to our school counselor or our school social worker and saying, what do you think? And that individual would make a judgment based on all the information that they have and know about that student. That's pretty daunting to put on somebody, one person. So we actually had a tip from Drummond and Woodson that Maine Department of Ed was doing this. And so I reached out and we had a quick webinar. Mr. Doucette was on that call, and so was Andrea Daigle, the social worker here at school. And from what they explained, this opportunity, it's the opportunity to form a school-based team. That team has access to a platform. It's actually the same platform, Navigate 360, that we have our ALICE training on. And if we have a threat assessment, it's a team-based approach to that threat assessment. So you have different eyes and different mindsets around what's going on with that student. They recommend, obviously, a school social worker or counselor for the mental health aspect of it. They have recommend an administrator, so the administrator has knowledge about the student's past behavior incidents or current behavior incidents that are going on. A school nurse who has access to their health information. Also, any other team players that might have some helpful information about what's going on with that student. So we've formed our school-based teams. I've reached out to the safety center. They have us on a cohort training schedule. I believe we're starting as early as next week. Our school-based teams will have an online training where they have to go through the level, we call it the level 1 training. Once the level 1 training is completed, and they're going to give us about 4 weeks to do that, then we will have a Zoom training with the safety center as a level 2 step. And once we complete that, we will have access to the suite, and we will be a CSTAG trained school, and we'll be able to conduct our own threat assessments moving forward, which is pretty amazing. Any questions on that? That's all I have. You do have your administrator reports, and for our new board members, what we do is every month we rotate administrator reports. So this meeting you have Mr. Kaleta, Mr. Nadeau, Ms. Kelly, and Mr. Saucier. Next meeting you'll have Mr. Doucette, Mr. Anderson, you'll have Ms. Anne-Marie Garrett, and you'll have Stacy Sear for adult and continuing ed. So we rotate every month. And the administrators are in the room, so if you have a question about their report, they're here to answer it.
I know one that goes off, but I don't know what it's. Do we have any questions for the administrators? Robby, I read yours, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more?
Yeah, so really the science of reading is kind of almost like a new way. They've been doing a lot of research on how kids learn how to read. And so I put a little bit of information in terms of what is the science of reading, and then a couple things that we're doing to improve our reading, really at those younger grade levels. So when kids get into that third, fourth grade, where they go from learning to read, to reading to learn, really have that good foundation. So in the past, and maybe most of us are taught to read, a lot of whole word learning. So, you know, memorizing certain words, putting things together, you know, what's this word, so you look at the context clues of the book, what the picture is, kind of be able to find out what that word is, what they mean they're trying to get. And now really a lot of it's moved towards how words sound based on different letter groupings. You know, back to the old Greeks used to teach it based on, you know, each letter is a certain thing. Now we look at, you know, two O's, what does that sound like? Ooh, that thing. We have a couple different resources that we've been using, and these have not expensive resources, but Hegarty, we're using something called Rhyme Magic. But really kids learning how words are grouped together, how letters group together to make words. So when they're going through a book, they don't have to worry about the pictures. They can really look at those letter combinations to be able to sound out the word.
I was so excited to see this, Robby, because there's this book written on how we changed the way we learn to read in the past 50 years. I mean, I'm a little bit older than you, but I remember doing sounds and phonics instead of whole word recognition, and my kids were learning whole word recognition. And there's this whole book on maybe we should go back to the phonetic approach, and how this other one works really well with students who have a hard time with the grouping of letters, but for students who are kind of in your median, the phonics work really well, and maybe we should go back to that. So I'm so excited to see this, because I was gonna start bothering you about it anyway, so this is perfect.
And if you're interested in stuff, there's podcasts out there that talk about the science of reading by Amplify. And Amplify is actually the company that we get our grades 4 and 5 reading program from, so. It's some really interesting stuff when you start learning, you know, how kids actually learn how to put things together.
Mhm.
So the little things they're putting together in kindergarten and first grade, and what that looks like as they get into fourth grade and they're really reading to learn.
Yeah.
So,
So I'm very excited to see this today.
When I started as a first grade teacher, we were still in a whole language school where I was working, and I remember prompting children to look at the picture. What is the picture telling you? And having kids trying to match the picture with what they knew about letters. So if they saw a picture of a dog and they saw a D, you'd hope they'd say dog because of the D. But a lot of times they'd say, you know, dirt, because there was dirt under the dog. So there was real no connection to, you know, the actual phonetic awareness of, they were reading pictures. Could some kids do that and then figure it out? Yeah. But the data now suggests the opposite, that we were teaching children improper techniques on how to, you know, decode and decipher words. So I too am glad. A few months ago, Dave had shared an article with me, and he asked, are we a 3Qing school? Are we a whole language school? I said, we're not anymore. We're science of language, which is good.
and this answers that question directly. We're not. You know, I think we're really doing some great things. You know, the two programs that I shared, that's actually where things were brought up with teachers. They wanted to try this out. We've seen some really good data behind it.
It's fantastic. Any other administrators want to say anything, or you're going to rest on your submission?
Well, just at this time right now, we've got a group of students in France that are enjoying themselves. I just saw some pictures that were downloaded there, so the kids are getting out there in the world, and got another group going to Greece with Sarah during April break. So, you know, besides the scholastic and sports here, we're also getting out into the world of learning out some real lessons in the real world. So it's really exciting. And we are also having a trip at the end of the school year to Los Angeles with a group of about 46 students as well.
Mr. Dorman said he would come to the next meeting to present that, because he has not got approval for that.
At this point, that's it. We're going into the final stretch of the year here, so it's a busy time. And we are also holding vacation school again for anyone that's behind in some new standards. So we're getting that ready, and we have 4 instructors for that as well.
Those students experiencing any of the general strike over there?
They sure have, yeah, they.
What an education.
Yeah, big time, you know, so, right off the bat, you know, they had to wait quite a bit longer for their train.
Yeah.
They were able to, I guess they had to wait extra 6 hours, and, but they were able to work on their math, Mr. Davis. Their challenge was great.
I thought the 68%, 64% receiving honors was pretty amazing.
Very excited to see those numbers, and a lot of those numbers were the high honors, which, you know, included that they, you know, their house scores were all 3s, and their academic scores were all 3 and higher as well. So they were very, very good, best we've seen so far, so, you know, I think
That's
things
awesome.
are really taking traction, yeah. And more teachers are, you know, if there's more chances or opportunities to score more, it's taken a while to be able to do that. When you say it now, I think there's more, you know, more chances for that. So we're seeing our grade point averages going up over time as well.
Jill and Peter, you good?
Just wanted to say that our street signs are up, so beware. They do record the speed of the vehicles that are going by. It is accessible to the police department. It hasn't been granted to them yet. But they do record on a graph the speed that you're going by. So you've seen the, that's a $28,000 price tag that we applied a grant for that I'm working on, and I ended up getting 2 of these signs to replace the old dilapidated signs that were there. But technology today will help you to make sure that you're gonna go a little bit slower in school zones. We notice when we turn them off, the speed of the traffic in front of our schools. So it really does work. And so before you go trying just to see how fast you can go in that zone, they will cut off at 50. So you can go 52 and then the lights are gonna go off. So, but they do record the speed on a graph, and it is accessible to the police department. In transportation, I can say that after we wrap up this meeting tonight, we're actually going to be able to say that we're fully staffed, and that's a huge accomplishment to try to get that put together. So we're hoping that staff stays together for another 50 years.
Sure it'll be fun.
And our buildings are, you know, it's hard to be looking at an older building like we have here and trying to make it perfect. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us. I know that we've looked at some bathrooms that need to be redone. We've looked at some numbers there. We've met with the finance committee and building committee as well. So we're going to be facing some challenges, you know, with being able to bring our facilities back up to where they need to be today. Our elementary school is in very, very nice shape. I think our staff has done an excellent job of making that building, you know, change the facelift of that building, and it looks nice, and it's in order. We've removed a huge portion of asbestos tiles out of that building. So I think we're taking humongous steps forward to keep the building safe and in order. But all of it comes with a price tag, obviously. So we're working within the means as much as we can to try to, we don't want to overextend the budget to our taxpayers. So that's what we're doing.
I have a question on the speed signs. What time do they usually turn on and turn off? Like,
So at 2:45 in the afternoon, they'll be flashing yellow, and the speed limit would be 15, and they'll turn back off at 3:30. In the morning, it'll be 7:30 and 8:15. They're on for 45 minutes. So that's the 15-mile-an-hour speed zone.
shall the speed limit in the morning be turned on earlier? Like, just a notice for me, like coming here in the morning and I'm waiting in line to drop off my little one. I'm passing by the school zone a few minutes prior to 7:30, and then we're waiting. Most of the school buses and stuff are getting there earlier. Should the speed limit be put up earlier?
It's very much mandated by the Department of Transportation as to how many minutes that we can leave those signs on. If schools will leave them on all day long. And know that the 15-mile-an-hour speed zone is only enforceable if there's a student or that is visible. So if you're going 25 miles an hour and there's no student visible, you can go 25 miles an hour in that 15 zone. But if there is a student that's visible anywhere on the sidewalk, then it is 15. So you're at the discretion of the police officer that's going to be sitting there as well. I don't disagree that it wouldn't be a bad idea to possibly change it 15 minutes earlier and have it stop at 8 o'clock because our students are all in. But what we're finding is that 8 o'clock or a few minutes after 8 is when you're finding a lot of the students that are going to come running into the school and paying a lot less attention as to what's going on. So that was kind of the reason why we ended up going that route. So, thanks.
Jill, you report on some training, is there anything else?
Well,
or-
I try to do, talk about something different every time I report out. And let's see, special ed right now, we don't have any openings, everything's full, which I think is the first time this year. We have great staff. We have, it's what becomes difficult with the trainings that we have brand new staff, and then we have some who've been here for 2.5 years. So you're really trying to meet the needs of everyone and try to be flexible every time we have something, because they have such different needs, so. But if ever there's anything that anybody wants to hear about, I'm happy to provide any information and try to come up with things, but if you come up, think of a question, just email me and I'd be happy to report out on something. And I'm excited about, the reading program that the regular education classrooms will be using, because I think we'll have less referrals in special education, because we've been using SPOT. We have a lot of different ways that we try to avoid that whole word, and kids end up guessing a lot of times. So.
I have a guesser at home. Not always a good guesser, but a guesser.
Yeah, so I'm excited about that.
Well, thank you all. Now, committee business. Ben,
So I misspoke a while ago when I said the treasurer should be on the finance committee. Sarah was not on the finance committee, so I guess it doesn't matter. I thought that was past practice, but that is what it is. So on the finance committee, we have Shannon, and Gary was on the finance committee.
Maybe you don't think you were on the finance?
I must have been, but I've completely forgotten.
So that's an as-needed committee, and
Oh, good.
so we don't have a regular time. In the past, we've met when we've had a difficult budget and we needed recommendations. We pulled in the finance committee and had those conversations. Other than that, if we would have to make a big purchase that's not budgeted, we might bring you in, but that's essentially what the finance committee is for. Are you okay to still be on it?
Oh, sure.
All right.
I've had to do so much already.
And Katie, did I hear you were okay to be on that as the treasurer? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So we're good with finance. Facilities committee, we have, Keith was on it with Sarah. That's an as-needed committee as well. Maybe once, maybe twice a year, we'll pull in the finance committee, and it's to look at, before we recommend something for a facilities change, we'll have them come and take a look at it and get their thoughts and opinions on those recommendations.
I'd like to be on facilities.
Anybody want to fight Tanya for that? Negotiations, this is, during times of negotiations, it can be time-consuming. We typically meet during the day with certain groups so that the employee groups are available. Right now, we are currently negotiating with our secretary group. Those have typically been a 1 p.m. meeting. And then our ed tech group is typically right after the school day, 3 o'clock or 3:30 or so. We're negotiating with those two groups right now. When we negotiate with the teachers, that's been an after-school meeting as well, so typically around a 3 o'clock, 3:30. And then our other Teamster groups are usually during the day. So if you don't have flexibility during the day at all, it might not be a good fit. But it is nice to have board representation in those conversations. We currently have 2 vacancies, Keith and Abby, and I do remember our last conversation was between the 3, it'd be nice to have 2 always try to be at a negotiation, and not necessarily all 3. That was our last conversation.
I used to be on the negotiations committee. I'm happy to go back.
we're happy to have you back.
I have a really flexible schedule. Do that.
It looks like we are wrapping up with the secretary group, so I don't think that one's gonna drag on. And we've only had one meeting with the ed techs this far. Policy committee, I'm trying to meet every other month so that we can cycle through a group of policies for first read, second read, between those 2 months. So it would be nice to have somebody who's able to do that. We've been meeting around 3 o'clock, and we go till 4:30. Like I said, every other month is the schedule that we've been following. Right now, we've revised all of our A section policies, all but one of our B section policies, so we'd be moving on to C section policies rather soon.
It's exciting work. Actually, it's pretty important. If you look at what the school boards say, school boards do, they make policy, they're not supposed to manage, they're not supposed to, it's really all about policy, so this is the book of policy. And what we do is, the superintendents spit out policy changes based on current changing events, and so we look at them and see if they fit our local community, basically. It's a great way to find out what the policies actually are.
And Dave's been really good about, you know, taking a look at what's provided as a boilerplate from Drummond and Woodson and saying, why are they recommending that? So Dave's been valuable, but it's nice to have different varying viewpoints. And again, like he said, making them specific to this district and not necessarily for Yarmouth.
I used to be on that committee. I can't really do it now. I think I'll have my hands full, but it was probably the most interesting non-school board meeting, part of the meeting.
Toby, I was kind of hoping you and Dave would not both be on.
I wouldn't do that to anyone. We'd go back and start from A again. Can you talk to me about, can you explain dropout prevention, how often that happens? What's that?
Yeah, it used to be called dropout prevention, and it's morphed into the attendance committee. Back in the day, the statute said you had to have one dropout prevention committee meeting per month. We've formed committees that are about attendance and dropout. We typically invite a board meeting at our end of the year meeting to kind of look at our data and see what kind of changes we're going to implement for the following year. Sylvia Dow-Harvey compiles all the data for attendance for us, keeps track of our truancies, and keeps our dean of students in check on both schools, and it's been working really wonderful. It's just to get another person to weigh in on what else we can try. As I reported out to you guys last meeting with our snapshot data, chronic absenteeism is an issue in this district. Not necessarily truancy, we only get a few per year, but it's those kiddos that miss a lot of school because their parents are asking them to stay out or calling them out. So it's how to look at those type of things and how to address those type of things.
When do the meetings usually happen?
It's usually once a year at the end of the year, and it's usually after school hours.
I'll try.
No pressure.
It's not on the list yet. You have to be on the list.
I'm on the list now. It's once a year.
That's a good one to be.
Yeah.
We skipped over vocational advisory. Shannon, you're okay to stay on that for the rest of the year. And Tanya is our adult education advisory representative. That committee hasn't met in quite some time, but when Stacy's going to implement any changes, she would call that committee to meet. So Tanya, you're okay with that? Yep. Keith was on the technology committee. Again, the DOE used to require we had a tech plan that was updated every so often. That requirement is not the same anymore. However, whenever we are looking at making a big technology purchase, Emery will pull us together as a committee and say, okay, this group of students hasn't had new devices in X amount of years. What do you think about this rotation, that type of thing? So maybe once a year, Anne Marie, would you say?
Yes.
Yeah. And it's to talk about technology.
Can we just call Keith? He always seems to like.
Yeah.
Like,
Just come in, Keith. Any takers?
I don't mind doing it.
Thank you. Thank you, take it.
and then finally, we need reps to the Regional Service Center. We need 3 to close out this school year, and then starting in July, that would move to 2 representatives at that time. So this would be just for the balance of the year. We do know that we have to meet at least one more time to hopefully approve the budget of Valley Unified, and then maybe one more after that to wrap up the year. So maybe 2 meetings, maybe only 1 between now and the end of the school year.
To discuss what again?
It's the Valley Unified, so it's the partnership that we have with Madawaska and 33 with our shared services. Like we share me, we share Lucy, we share Giselle, and some other software programs and different things.
I'll go back to that one.
I could do the one that just finishes out this year,
There you go.
as long as they'll understand it.
Okay, so that would close these out then.
Awesome. Now, old business.
First thing I have under old business is just to update you again on the interlocal agreement. You know from last time that based on your approval of those last changes, this is now a complete document. So I did add all of the final amendments. They're all notarized inside the document, and I just wanted you to have a clean copy so that you have it. If you notice any errors, please let me know, and I'll make sure that I correct those. But I think we should be in good shape. And again, we are now in the number 6 amended term, and we would be in the first extension of the amended term, which would start this July 1st, which is when the new representation would go to 2 members per district. So, new board members, this document essentially talks about how we're going to cooperate with Madawaska and 33 in that partnership. And it talks about all of the things that, that guide that partnership, how we can vote, how we establish a budget together, so on and so forth. It's really riveting stuff if you want to read it.
And yet it's taken a very long time.
We've come a long way this year in making sure that all of the things that, when Toby was last here and he was advocating for, a lot of those things, I think almost all of those things now exist in the agreement.
I just mentioned for the new members, this was something that came into being planning for a unified school district with one central school in Frenchville. So there's great merging of programs and protocols and everything else. And then that didn't come true. We still have Valley Unified though, and we do share a lot of services and programs with Frenchville 33 and with Madawaska. And so if you do nothing else, if you just go to the back 3 pages and look at what we're sharing with them, it'll give you a good perspective about the current status of that relationship. I could just tell you from my brief service on the group, I think our future is very much tied in with cooperative agreements across districts, even as we might feel very strongly about maintaining our school building. You know, the parish, the preacher and the priest always tells you, the church is not the building, the church is all of you, right? And that's true for schools too. The school actually is not the building, it's the people who work there. So we can have a central school even, with many different school buildings. And maybe we'll get to that. We're certainly in a path in that direction, I think. So there's some real important things that we're gonna have to work through in the coming years. And it's all right here. So it's very interesting, very important group.
So I've heard of this, I haven't read it, but I'm going to, I talked to Dave about it, he had questions going back to when this was started, and I talked to Sarah some about it, so. I guess I'll look for those of you who were here who did this, do you think this is the right thing to be doing right now? Sarah?
We've already voted on it, so.
But we need to, I think we need an approval, a final.
No, this is just FYI.
No.
They unanimously
Awesome.
It was
approved
last
meeting.
meeting, yeah.
Good.
Yeah, no, I think, and I think even at the last minute, there was some changes too, as far as, that whole supermajority and,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was. And I think this meets the intent of what is in everybody's best interest.
That's fantastic.
Everybody came away from Val Unified satisfied with these amendments, which was nice. All three SAUs.
Good, I'm glad to hear. Strategic planning.
I just wanted to give you an update that we had our first strategic planning leadership team meeting that occurred last week, Mr. Doucette? Yeah. We met with Jennifer, she came up as a leadership team. So the leadership team is Mr. Doucette, Mr. Nadeau, myself, Shannon. Keith was on it, but is no longer. And then we have our 2 student reps as well. We just looked at the numbers that would be appropriate to target for our strategic planning listening process. So our marching orders from that meeting was, okay, this group here, find this many staff that want to participate. This group here, find this many community members. This group here, find how many students. And so right now, that's what we're collecting. We have a brief Zoom meeting with Jennifer tomorrow to kind of go over our status. And I can tell you as somebody working on the staff listing, we put out a survey this weekend. Staff started sharing their desire to be part of this process, and so we're putting that all together as well. We also pushed out a parent survey yesterday as well, and so we're gathering that as well. So right now we're on track, and I would encourage anybody here, if you want to participate in that strategic listening process where you're having those conversations, you could either reach out to, actually your point of contact right now would be Susie Parody, because Keith was the second point of contact. I don't know if a second board member wants to jump on board now that Keith is off. I'm sure that Shannon is fine as your sole board member on that leadership team, but if anybody else wants to, please let me know, and we'll welcome you to the leadership team.
Another person?
No, that'd be great.
I mean, I'd be happy to. I was really interested in this. This is something we started right before I left last time.
Yeah.
So
awesome. I'll tell Jennifer that to put you on the list.
thank you.
Toby, are you available for a quick Zoom tomorrow morning at 9? I'll send you the link.
Probably not.
I'll send you.
I've got a 9 o'clock, but I can just slide it to 9:15.
I'll send you the calendar invite, and if you can,
Yeah.
then please do.
Just a will signing. I can make them read it first.
All right. It should be a brief meeting. That's all I have for old business.
New business then.
Under new business, we do have a resignation. Excuse me, we have an agenda adjustment for retirement. I did put a letter on your table that Gilda Morris, after 22 years of service as an ed tech, has decided to step down and sail off into the sunset. So we should entertain a motion to accept Gilda's retirement.
So moved. I'll second.
Second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's unanimous.
We have a resignation. You should have a letter from Derek Cooper. Derek came to see me a little over a month ago and shared his plans. He and his family are looking to relocate to another state. Is very appreciative of all the opportunities that he'd had here. He loves working here. He loves being part of this team. But it's something that he and his family have been considering for quite some time, and now is just the right time for him to do it. So Derek is officially resigning at the end of this school year.
Make a motion to approve the resignation.
Wait a second. Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's unanimous.
We have no transfers. For new hires, you should have a letter from Mr. Kaleta and the hiring committee. They interviewed for the English Language Arts teacher position. And just to remind everyone, this is the position that is vacant because Jocelyn Saucier transferred to Doug Clapp's visual performing arts position. And not necessarily Jocelyn's position, but a position in the English team, on the English team. So they are recommending Miss Catherine Nadeau, is that the pronunciation?
Yep, Nadeau.
Nadeau, thank you. And Ms. Nadeau has 17 years of experience in English from grades 6 to 12. She's currently teaching at Belfast High School, and Mr. Kaleta has told me that she and her husband have simply fallen in love with this region. I believe they have dog sleds, or they want to start dog sledding, and so this is absolutely the perfect place for them to be, and she's very excited to join our team. Dog sledding, imagine that.
You know she needs some dogs.
We'll entertain a motion.
I'll make motion to approve Catherine Nadeau's.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
And you have also a letter of recommendation from Peter Saucier. He is recommending Larry Prophet for the night custodian. Larry has been working with us for about 2 or 3 weeks, Mr. Saucier. Yeah, as a sub while pending this recommendation, and according to Peter, has been doing a very good job. Peter is the brother of Penny Lee Sutherland, who is teaching at the middle school here. What's that? Larry. Yes, is the brother of Penny Lee. Sorry.
Entertain a motion.
So,
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous?
And I'll say, like Jill said earlier, we are fully staffed with the exception of Derek's position, which we already have at least 1 or 2 candidates, so things are looking good to be able to fill out positions for next school year.
And we have a raft of coaching.
Yeah, so every year we bring recommendations to you, and it's all kind of funky. So now we've come up with an approval method. Every season I've asked Josh to compile his list of coaches, whether they're new or returning, just so the board can see who our coaching staff is every season. So we'll do the same thing in fall, the same thing in winter. But this is your spring approval list, and they have everything from varsity right now to middle school. So if the board wishes, we could approve it all at once.
moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous? We're looking at some calendar adjustments, right, Ben?
Yep, so I'm bringing to you a plan that was shared with the union to figure out how we're going to make up our days. Just to remind you, we've had school canceled 4 times for students. The first was on October 18 when we had a water line break. here on Pleasant Street. You all forgave that day already, voting to reduce our student days from 176 to 175, which is allowable by law. So that day has been forgiven. We had a snow day on January 13. That was not a remote day. That's a day that would need to be made up. We had 2 remote days that do not need to be made up. Then we had another snow day on February 17 that needs to be made up. And as I told you earlier, our March 24 gunshots fired issue was waived by the DOE. So we do have 2 student days, 3 staff days that need to be made up. And what we are proposing is for the first of those student days, we would like to take our May 30 workshop and make that a student day so that we can get that student day out of the way prior to the Juneteenth holiday weekend. Unfortunately, we will run out of days though, and so that second student day will fall after the Juneteenth weekend, so the last day of school would be on June 20th. The June 16th, which currently is the last day of school, would revert back to a full day, and June 20th, the last student day, would be an early release. And then your staff would finish their obligations on the 21st and 22nd of that week as workshop days. That's what we are proposing. Otherwise, if we don't change anything, the students would have to come back 2 days after the Juneteenth holiday. And then we figure that with family busy planning time, and that's usually Camp Kick It weekend or Dutch soccer week, we figure the less impact to that week is better.
I move to approve the current school year 2022-2023 calendar adjustments as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
And what we'll look to do is push out a revised calendar to the parents tomorrow.
Thank you.
And the last item before our budget workshop, I did send a memo to the board members about Doug Clapp and his history quiz bowl team getting an impromptu invite to participate in the national quiz bowl, even though they did not have a state and they did not have a New England. They just deferred right to the national because of the circumstances, which is an unbelievable for them to have that opportunity. Because we do have board policy that says all out-of-state travel must be board approved, I did want to get your formal approval, although Doug has been busy making his travel arrangements. Just so you know.
I move to approve the CHS History Bowl trip to Washington, D.C.
I'll second. Any discussion?
No local funds are going to this trip. It will be funded by the Gifted and Talented program.
Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Unanimous. Now we're at budget workshop.
My favorite time of the meeting, where I turn it over to Lucy.
My favorite time of meeting. So you all have a packet in front of you. I apologize for those that were here last meeting. I may repeat myself a little bit for the new members. So this is your, so the Department of Education requires that I present the budget, or that I prepare the budget in a certain fashion. So what you have in front of you, the first 3 sections, one's a first sheet, and then there's another staple packet that has 3 sheets, and then there's a third packet that has 10 sheets, 10 pages. That's the same information presented in a little different way. The first one is like a super summary by cost center, and the cost centers are defined by the Department of Education. So the first one is regular instruction. It basically captures everything that happens in the classroom, or the majority of what happens in the classroom. So your classroom teachers, your ed techs that that do regular instruction. Your gifted and talented program is there. The second one is special education programs, so anything to do with special education. It includes your special ed teachers, your one-on-one ed techs. It includes your speech, your OT, your PT, those kinds of services. Your third one is your career and technical education, and what that captures is the CTE program that we have at St. John Valley Tech. We would only see an amount there if the budget that the CTE had was not sufficient for the programs that they were planning that year. We used to have the full cost in our budget, and we would have a contribution, but now they have their own funding source, and as long as they don't go over that funding source, that line would be zero. The fourth one is other activities, so that's your and extracurricular trips. So your co-curricular trips are your clubs, mainly your club.
Sports team.
The extracurricular is your sports teams.
Okay, yeah.
Right, so the two combined. The student and staff support is things that pertain to the classroom but are not in the classroom itself. That they're in support of the students or in support of the teachers. So teacher professional development, your guidance, your library program, your technology, your student assessment, those kinds of, and your student nurse, your school nurse, so that that's what's captured in that grouping. System administration is central office, your superintendent and his staff. School administration is the school offices, so the individual offices in the school and what they need to run. Student transportation is anything to do with busing and wheels. Facilities is anything to do with buildings, so cleaning and custodial work and repairs and maintenance. Your school lunch program captures anything to do with school lunch, the staffing, the food, the supplies, and the equipment. And continuing education is the program that Stacy coordinates along with, it's got a Madawaska component, but this is the SAB 27 component. It also, it includes the literacy program and the kind of the CHOPS Academy, which helps the high school students with alternative education. But what we've done this year is we've taken out the daycare piece of it, and it will have its own funding. So the total budget, and you see the first column is what was approved last year as a total budget. The middle column, ideally they're both number 5, one should be 4, is what we're proposing, and the difference is the increase from last year, and the number 7 is a % increase from last year's budget. So that's the super summary. The next sheet that has 3, the yellow, rolls up to regular instruction. So there are subgroupings of what happens in regular instruction. So if you look at the orange line, you'll be able to tie it back to the first sheet. This is just a deeper dive, and then the last sheet is an even deeper dive. And what I've done is I grouped it by types of expenses within each summary subgroup. So all salaries in that subgroup, health insurance, salary. So the groups of expenses. On the right, you'll see some of the explanations for why there's a larger increase than normal. Sometimes there's movements amongst the groupings. It may have reduced in one cost center, but increased in another if staffing has moved or changed. There's constant staff changes, and I need to represent them based on the Department of Education's requirement that says if it's a special ed teacher, it must be in this grouping, but if that teacher moves to grade 6, I then have to move the cost of that teacher to a different line in the budget. You also have a summary sheet that shows the total categories for the whole budget. So here in the 10-pager, you had the salaries in regular instruction, you had the salaries in whatever, in special ed, salaries in custodial, they were broken down by cost centers. In the very last sheet here, you have the total salaries in the whole budget. You have the total salary benefits in the whole budgets and health insurance. So broken down by the groupings, budget-wide. There's 2 columns of percentages. The first percentage is the percent of that category as part of the overall budget. So 50%, 57% is total salaries is 57% of the total budget. when you add up the salaries, health insurance, salary benefits, and then so there's 79% of this budget that's salaries and benefits. The rest is everything else that needs repairs, your transportation, but 79% of the budget is salaries and benefits. And the last column is change of that category from prior year. So the last budget meeting, the first draft, when we brought it to the board, we had, and how I build the budget is, we gather the information from the teachers and the staff, and we start in November, December, and start asking, what do you think you'll need for next year? I call it my 3 ghosts of budget. What happened last year? What happens now? And looking to the future, what do we need? What has changed? What are we no longer doing? What are we doing different? What staff did we not have last year? We have this year. I got a plan for next year. So my 3 ghosts is how I plan the budget. I'm basically compiling from the teachers and the staff and the principals and the directors. I compile it all and we put everything in the wish list. That first look is our wish list. If we had everything that we felt we needed, this is what it looked like. So our first look last budget meeting, and then I also compile where I anticipate my revenues are going to come from. And so our first look would have had an increase at the town level of 2.33 mils over and above what we currently have this year. So that's a steep ask. One of the things that we have to, we can always bring it and it may pass at referendum and we may actually have a budget that would be that high. The towns therefore have to be able to collect those. So it doesn't do us any favors to build a budget that's over, we're actually spending it, and then end up not being able to collect the funds. So we have to be reasonable in our ask to our local public, and that's something that we look at. So this second look at the budget looked at, okay, this is what it looked like when we first looked at it. Now we got to look to see what's reasonable. We don't think we can bring a budget of 2.23 mil increase. What are renovations that may be able to be put away? Is there staffing changes that we make? 79% of our budget is staffing. So what changes do we need to make? And we first look at those that are retiring, resigning, or have left. Do we need to replace it? Can we absorb it internally? Can we make changes? We need to look outside the box. So there's a sheet with a list of changes that we've made since the first draft of the budget. So an example of that is when I first met, I had not included the PreK expansion grant. And one of the things that my concern was with the PreK expansion grant is the transportation piece. There are some things in the budgets that generate funds for us through the funding formula. The funding formula is how the funds are distributed from the state of Maine and they come to each district. They basically have a pot of money. They run it through a funding formula to make it as equitable as they can be for each different district in the state. So they get one point of money, it funnels through that. One of that criteria includes transportation costs in each district. It's based on expenses from 2 years ago, and it actually funnels through. So by them asking us to remove our transportation expenses and put into a grant that's only going to be for a year, it'll affect us 2 years down the road when we have fewer transportation costs, and our funding then will be reduced. So I found a way to kind of not fudge, but more accurately reflect what we're currently doing. We're currently doing the noon runs anyways, and right now we're charging the cost of our bus driver custodians 50-50. 50 to facilities, 50 to transportation. We never changed that since we started doing the noon runs. So I'm shifting some of the costs, and those that are doing noon runs, I'm putting more of their costs in transportation. So even when we do the PreK grant and we charge those costs for this year, 2 years from now, I'll have those costs in there, and it shouldn't affect our funding 2 years down the road. We had a request in the budget for a high temp dishwasher based on a report that had been done through ours at Portland Elementary was broken, no longer repairable, and we don't have the staffing to do dishes by hand in the elementary school, so we've decided to fund that immediately this year instead of maybe next year. So I was able to take it out of next year's budget. Retirees have since been known, retirees and their replacement. So those costs I've adjusted who's going out, who's coming in. The trip credits back to transportation department. So all our costs are initially charged to the transportation line. So cost center 8 or 9 is transportation. So all our costs are initially charged there. But then we also have trips for sports and trips for arts, our art drama going south. So we then turn around and we charge the co-curricular and the extracurricular department for those trips, but I had forgotten to put the credit back into the transportation department, so those costs were duplicated. So I removed them from the transportation department, I gave the credit. Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield is our health insurance for everyone except our custodians, bus drivers, cooks, and so there's a handful of people that are Allegiant Care, but Anthem, when I initially start the budget, I put in a 10% increase as a placeholder. They've come back last week and basically informed us the maximum rate increase would be 6%. We don't know what our actual one will be. We'll find out in a week or two. But I've since removed it by the 4% that we know is not going to happen. Technology reductions, and Anne Marie went through her budget again with a fine-tooth comb and was able to reduce by $43,000. Some items I had duplicated. The quote for the bus that we had is actually came in a little bit higher than what we had initially put in. Some of the requests that the teachers and the staff had put in, we've removed and reduced. Going down the conferences, we've reduced. Travel for PD, some items have been duplicated. We had a request for an extra ed tech from Mr. Kaleta. He's since removed that request. UMFK, Pleasant Street Academy, reduced early college. So what that was at one point we had an agreement with UMFK, what we would call Pleasant Street Academy, so that that dual enrollment piece, and it was funded in a specific way, and the college would give us a reduced tuition. They've since changed that program, and now that we have free college for the first 2 years of community college, we no longer have as much of a cost. So I was able to remove that piece in the budget, still leaving the early college piece where we do have some costs, but nowhere near what it used to be. Junior college is basically the same thing.
So the state of Maine will pay 2 college courses for every high school student per year, right, Mr. Kaleta? And so we budget a little bit more above and beyond in case we have a student that wants to take that 3rd or that 4th, but typically if you have that 2 courses per year train, if you follow that, most of our students are able to hit 1 year worth of college in their high school years. So we do have
12 credit hours per year.
Thank you. 12
So
per hour.
up to 24 credit hours.
Thank you, Peter.
In a 2-year period.
Thank you, Peter.
You're welcome.
And then you have some other, anywhere from a couple thousand to 1,000 reductions for items that were in the budget that either the directors were able to, and principals were able to go through and help me reduce the cost, or basically decide not to go that route. Changes in ed techs is again, once we looked at staffing, what I do is I put it, when I start my budget, I look at everybody who's currently on staff that has a position, and I price them for next year. So that's done in like October, November. Few changes since then. So then I always go back and look back and speak with the directors and principals and basically say, okay, who do we have and who do we need next year? So that this is reflecting that I was able to reduce by 1 position that I had put in there. So total reductions in the expenses that I initially had, we were able to reduce by about $351,000. On the revenue side, the Department of Education has given us a revised ED 279, which is our funding formula, and they've reduced the mill rate expectation. And on that, what that means is that funding formula, in order to get the full amount of what the state determines is the minimum required to educate this amount of kids in this district, you have to contribute, the locals have to contribute a certain percent. And we're about 35-65%. They've since shifted about 122,000 from the local requirement, and they're gonna give it to us as state funding. So our state funding has increased by 122,000. The required local has decreased by 122,000. And then after our pre-K enrollment, we have 5 students that are enrolled that will be coming from tuition towns that I have not yet factored in, so there's an extra $18,000 in revenues. So when we put that in perspective, and run it through my magic little spreadsheet, that this sheet itemizes where all the funding is gonna come from, or the revenue streams, as compared to last year. And the very last number that I put in is additional local funds, and you'll see that in the little blue line. I account for everything else that I can think of, or that we've had historically, or that I can count on for next year. And by law, I can't present a budget to the locals without knowing where's the funds gonna come from. I can't have a $16 million budget and only know where 12 million is gonna come from. So I have to basically itemize clearly where the funds are gonna come from, build my budget, and then the last number is going to the locals, and this very last sheet shows us where we are today. So if we were going to referendum today, we would be looking for a 1.05 mill rate increase instead of the 2.33 that we had at first draft. So improvement. And I apologize for those that this is their first look at the budget. And, there's a lot there. I will leave those with you for you to digest. I ask that you not share it with the public because it's not ready to be shared with the public. And not that there's anything to hide, but it's a lot of information and we're not at the final draft. Any questions?
For newbies like me, are we allowed to take to digest or?
Oh, absolutely, yes, you can take it home. Just don't post it on Facebook, please, we're not there yet.
I have a question about the measurements for FKES. Are they still gonna have
So we had a meeting just this week to talk about the way we want to continue programming to build this, and in order for the program to come to some kind of program that has students who are able to create music and productions, they have to have more opportunities to do so at earlier grade levels. What we're finding with the elementary programming this year is it's a one-stop shop once a week for the kiddos, and not all of them are into band. So what we would have to create is an opportunity for band kids to want to be in a band program, and at the elementary level it's very, very difficult to do so. So what we're looking at next year doing is having Sam continue with the music programming as she always has at the elementary level, and have Erica be here full day, where 7th and 8th grade would have band classes to build towards the high school level. We'd like to try that for next year and see if we can get it off the ground running. In meeting with Erica and Mr. Kaleta and Mr. Nadeau, it just, with the elementary beast that it is, if you create one special for one period for one class, you almost have to create for all the other classes in order to offset it. And an elementary schedule doesn't work that way. And asking a teacher to let 2 students or 3 students in their class go to band, it's not equitable for what's going on in the classroom as well. So we're going to try to have a middle school program off and running next year, and Mr. Kaleta has some good ideas about how to schedule that in. That's what
So
we're
you'll be
doing.
eliminating those 4, 5, and 6 band.
Next year we're gonna try shifting that to the middle school. So this year, Erica's only able to do a few middle school things and a few high school things, because she's here half the day, be here a full day next year with a full middle school program and high school program.
Now, would it be a scheduled class for middle school?
Yeah.
Like it is right now in the 4, 5, and 6?
Yeah, Mr. Kaleta, do you wanna talk on that?
Sure, we're See, the period 5 at middle school is more like a music appreciation classes for 7th graders. We'll get that 1 a quarter kind of build, an appreciation for music. Then in 8th grade, what we're hoping to do, we're still just starting, our schedules for next year. We're hoping that they can, with the morning schedule is kind of like their specials because they go to tech 1 quarter out of that. So out of 3 quarters, we would like to have 8th graders be able to choose if they want band, and then they'll learn, a lot about different instrumentation that year, music theory, so that when they get into high school, they'll be able to take, a band class each year. So that's kind of the plan right now.
So initially, when we had built the budget, we had requests for new instruments or increased instruments in both schools. But now that we're focusing more on middle school and high school, we don't need the duplication of instruments. So that's what that reduction is. There is a line in the budget that does have for new instruments for the middle high school. This is just eliminating them at the elementary school.
The new hire, the retiree and the new hire, there was a retiree at 71 and a new hire at 26. Is that a change in?
That is
it just seems like a really big difference.
Yep.
I can talk about it.
Yep.
So those retirees that you see there are seasoned veterans.
Okay.
The replacement that you see at 26 is an ed tech.
Okay.
Because we had shared with you last meeting that we're not filling one of those special ed teachers.
Okay.
And it's not to replace with an ed tech. What we're going to do is have 2 of our special ed teachers share in overseeing the life skills program. So that's how it's going to be operating next year.
That makes sense. Okay.
Did I say that right, Jill?
Yeah, because the numbers for 7th and 8th grade for next year are smaller number of students, so we can definitely cover the license.
Now with hopefully COVID behind us, is there really a huge demand for 2 full-time nurses?
Yeah, we've always had 2 nurses in the district. One was when we closed down the outlying schools, the second nurse went to a little less than full-time. But we're finding that the medical needs of our kiddos are getting greater and greater. So it's less of a COVID response and more of a student care response. Whereas we don't know how comfortable we would be having a nurse out of Fort Canada Elementary for half a day when we have kids with seizure disorders and we have med cabinets that are full and we're distributing 2, 3, 4 times a day. It's a lot. So for us, we feel safer knowing that we have a nurse in each building with the size of our schools right now. You speak to the nurses about the evolution. So Lynn Wetmore in Madawaska is a good one because she's been there for a while. She recalls just as much as 15, 20 years ago, having 2 or 3 different types of meds for students that were taking meds at that time. Now her cabinet's full. It's full, and that's a school district half the size of ours. It's just a lot of medical needs, a lot of care for some of these kids. We also have a new responsibility from the Maine CDC to report on everything since COVID. So if we have heightened, we've always had that reporting thing, but they were never putting us to task. Now it's daily reporting about what our illnesses are and the symptoms, and it's a lot of paperwork as well. There's a lot.
Any more questions, comments?
So typically, for the last or the third read, when we come to you, we'll have finite health insurance information. We'll have had another round of talking with our administration on, all right, what do we need, what do we want versus what do we need, and where are we going? So we should have closer to a more finite number for you. I just want to commend Lucy on the work she did in the past 3-4 weeks for this. I didn't know that we would be able to capture this much in that amount of time, so kudos to you, Lucy, for that work. And thank you to the administrators for being gracious enough to let some things go that you were really advocating for, but we have to be fiscally responsible.
Anything else? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?